Bruno?
Good. Thanks for having me, Anthony. Happy to be here.
I'm so glad to have you on. Really look forward to enlightening the listeners and viewers about your area of expertise and your mission. Before we get into what we're going to discuss today, I'd really love you to bring the listeners up to speed with how you've arrived at what you're doing today.
Yeah, I'm a board certified plastic surgeon, so I have a solo practice where I'm doing a lot of aesthetic outpatient surgery. But I got into the wellness and sort of longevity area about 8 or 9 years ago. I found out I had heart disease on a routine test, which led me to some other advanced tests like a Clearly scan, a CT angiogram, and then I became plant-based for a number of years, maybe 7 or 8 years. Then I just started to reintroduce some grass-fed meats and pasture-raised eggs into my diet. But along the way, I learned a lot, which I wasn't taught in medical school, about nutrition and exercise and sleep. And I created a digital course on this, and I have a sort of a virtual coaching program centered around it. But I really dove into this world of, for lack of a better term, wellness, longevity, lifestyle medicine, to help my patients, both my surgical patients and people who have no interest in plastic surgery, to how to improve their lives, extend their lives, and have a better quality of life.
Yeah, wow, what a journey, and so great that you're now passing on your wisdom that you learnt from, I guess, your health scare or that sort of that wake up, and now like empowering others. So it's really beautiful to see that. I'm really intrigued as to what attracted you to become a plastic surgeon.
I always wanted to be a doctor, and there was no doctors in the family, but I had juvenile rheumatoid arthritis as a child, so I was in and out of hospitals a lot when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I ended up enjoying that. And a surgeon because I liked doing procedures, and when I was in my general surgery training, I just really enjoyed what the plastic surgeons were doing. It was very creative. They worked on men and women, young, old, head to toe. So I got into plastic and reconstructive surgery. Although now my practice is primarily aesthetic, cosmetic, but it's a lot of problem solving, a lot of sort of creativity. And what I notice is when we see patients and clearing them for surgery, I couldn't help but look at their labs, and I noticed these people weren't healthy, like a lot of them metabolically, high cholesterol, high blood sugar. Even though they were cleared enough for surgery, I kept thinking, wow, these people, they're not getting the proper advice from their primary care doctors. And I'm here in Southern California, where we have Kaiser, which is one of the biggest HMOs in the country, and even the Kaiser doctors don't seem to be emphasizing prevention. And I find that is prevalent, at least in the United States, where people aren't getting the advice on lifestyle, diet and exercise that they really need. And I think because doctors are so overwhelmed, they have 10 minutes, 8 minutes with a patient. And I had a little bit more time going through my surgeries because people were seeing me electively. So I couldn't help but share my sort of thoughts on nutrition and what foods they should be eating and supplements and exercise to help them not only recover from my surgeries, but just to be healthier humans and live a better life. But sorry, that's my long answer. Plastic surgery, I love it still, and I do surgery all the time, but I really enjoy help educating people on wellness and nutrition and other things like that.
Yeah, wow. So you're helping people not only on from the outside perspective, but also on the inside perspective. So it's very much transformed
Yeah.
for your interest around, um, that creative craft that you do on the outside. You're now applying, I guess, I guess education and support from the inside to really help the whole being.
Yeah, it's more of like a holistic approach. And I realize that people don't go to a plastic surgeon to get advice on what to eat, but maybe they should. Or maybe if they're not getting it from their primary care doctor, they should be getting it from someone, because I still feel like I'm a doctor, a physician first, and probably like a plastic surgeon second. So some people listen, some are just, they just want their tummy tuck or their breast implants and they want to move on. But I still enjoy helping patients.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You wanting to, I guess, add further value and really help them along their journey, as opposed to just having a transaction. You're also introducing that relation part of, I guess, a interaction with someone, which is really nice. I'm sure they're really grateful for the, I guess, additional support they get from you in the way you treat them holistically.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's a need for it, in a sense that I think in America we're a little, as doctors, we're mainly reactive instead of being proactive. So if we can spread the word of lifestyle medicine and nutrition, like what you're doing, I think it's important for people to learn. And I think there's slow changes happening throughout the country, throughout the world. So I'm optimistic.
And back to your journey, the other one part that stood out for me was, that moment with the getting the heart sort of getting your calcium score. I've been this journey as well. What was the most profound bit of knowledge that you learned when you went along that journey to look after yourself? What really stood out for you?
I guess I didn't realize, I underestimated the power and the importance of nutrition, exercise, sleep along the way. Being a doctor, especially as a resident in med school and residency in my early 30s, we notoriously have poor diets, poor sleep, working in hospitals, being on call, eating out of cafeterias, vending machines. I sort of just let things go for so long and didn't really get any you know, blood work. Hadn't seen a doctor in, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. So I just decided to get a blood test, and which led to the calcium scan, which I just had no idea what disease I have or what anyone could have. And at the time I was 49, and it was a really high score. For your listeners, the calcium score tells you what calcifications or disease you have in your heart. And you're supposed to have a score of 0. My score was like 400, which led to other tests and other recommendations. But yeah, the importance of lifestyle, and I just really ignored it and neglected it for so long. But the good news is, you're never too late to start. And even at the age of 49, I started taking better care of my health and exercising more, learning the importance of resistance training and nutrition and avoiding processed foods, things like that, and how much of an impact it could have on the way you look, the way you feel, your labs, et cetera. And like, just you as the patient, we all as patients, as people, have that power, and you can be empowered to make that change. And that's what I really learned the most from it.
Wow. Yeah. So I guess before the recording, listeners, we were having a chat about Dr. Bill Bruno's pyramid, his longevity pyramid, and he's just shared the base of that pyramid. So I'll allow him to move on and share more about his longevity pyramid now that he's got started. And um, yeah, Bill, please share anything that you think is relevant in terms of, like, of those three areas: the nutrition, sleep, and exercise. What do you see as most important in those three areas in the foundation?
It's an interesting question. I think they're all important. Honestly, if I had to pick one, I'd probably say sleep, because think about it, how long you can go without eating? Days. How long could you go without exercising? Most people go their whole lives. How long can you go without sleeping? A day or two. I mean, you feel miserable, right? But I think they all are important. And when I sort of made this longevity pyramid, I was thinking, well, what's the foundation? What are things that we can all do that don't necessarily require medication? And if I start with nutrition, which I know is your expertise, is trying to eat mostly whole foods, right? Trying to avoid the ultra processed foods, trying to optimize your protein intake, trying to eat, say 30 grams of fiber a day, or something in that range, trying to eat more fermented foods, which I think a lot of people miss out. That's really important. And I don't really get that deep into the calories on that, but I think if people just looked at the quality of their food, and then even the timing of it, I think we snack too much, as at least as Americans, we're constantly eating. And there's something to be said for the time restricted eating. I don't think we all have to do fasting, but I do think if you could eat in a shorter window, maybe 8 or 10 hours, instead of snacking all throughout the day, that helps control blood sugars and metabolism. Um, you know, not going too deep into nutrition part, but then in exercise, I think a lot of people neglect resistance training. I think that's important. Men and women, young and old, the more muscle you have, the better metabolic health you'll have. And then also not neglecting, having a good base of cardio, but also doing some maybe high intensity work, at least maybe one day a week, or some sprinting or something like that. Because one of the biggest predictors of life expectancy is your VO2 max, which is right, the ability of how well your body can use oxygen. And then with sleep, I mean, trying to create probably a good sleep environment, going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time. That's probably the most important routine you can do. Um, Trying to sleep in a cold, dark room. I mean, none of this is really, groundbreaking advice here. But what I would say is, don't eat too close to bedtime. Like, stop eating at least 3 or 4 hours before bedtime. Don't exercise too close to bedtime. And related to sleep, which a lot of people I think are missing, is the circadian rhythm. We have this light dark cycle that a lot of us ignore. We go to work, we sit in an office, a lot of us, that has fluorescent lighting, and then we get home and it's dark out, but our homes are well lit. And this is throwing off a lot of our hormones. It throws off our natural circadian rhythm. So I use like blue blocker glasses at night, trying to cut down on that blue light. But going back to sleep briefly, getting that first 10 or 15 minutes of sunlight in the morning, that really helps set you up to fall asleep at night. And it really turns on your cortisol, turns off your melatonin. So there are lots of um, hormonal changes are happening that I think people ignore light. And you almost have to think of light, I guess, as a nutrient to the body. And I think that's really gotten thrown out of whack over the last 50, 70 years of, in living in modern life. But, is that, again, the foundation of the pyramid. If you could sort of do those things, I think you could really move towards optimizing your health. And then moving up that pyramid, I had certain tests to get. Like, we talked about some of these cardiac tests, calcium scan, CT angiogram, maybe some expanded lipid markers and inflammatory markers, because your listeners probably know this, the number one cause of death in the world is heart disease. Men and women, America, outside of America. Number two cause of death is cancer. And a lot of heart disease is preventable, maybe less so with cancer, but I would say if you're over the age of 50, you can consider there's a blood test, like a liquid biopsy, to rule out certain cancers. You can get a full body MRI to potentially screen for certain cancers. And then metabolically, like looking at hemoglobin A1C, whether you're type 2 diabetic or not, fasting insulin, which a lot of people aren't looking at, a lot of doctors aren't looking at. But just kind of ruling out things or disease states that could end your life briefly, not die of something that's avoidable. And then sort of above that, I start looking at uh, things like social connection and the importance of that, and the importance of reducing stress. And, we talk about these blue zones right throughout the world. Like, these people have a sense of community, they have a sense of faith. People who volunteer more tend to live longer. And then I would say maybe even above that, if you're going up this pyramid, you say supplements and hot saunas and cold plunges and red light therapy, I think things of that nature, where most people, I think, want to jump to like the top and do like red light and hot sauna, but they're eating poorly and they're not sleeping, so it's sort of, I guess, emphasizing the basis before you go up to the hyperbaric chamber and the NAD or the glutathione infusion. Like, start with the basics. I think that would be one of my messages. Sorry, that was a brief description of the pyramid. I hope I didn't go on too long.
Not at all. It was great to understand the pyramid, and you shared it obviously in good detail. One of the questions that intrigues, or one of the questions I have for you was, from your summary that was sent to me was this notion that eating less, moving more is not helpful. So I'm really keen to explore that with you.
Yeah, that's been the traditional advice probably for the last 40 or 50 years. And you look in it, at least in America, you see where it's gotten us. We're one of the sickest, most overweight um, developed countries in the world. And that advice has been, well, if you're overweight, just eat less, move more, do exercise, try to burn off more calories. And I think people have been obsessed with like calories, right? Burning calories, amounts of calories. I think it's the quality of the calories, right? This is what's important. 100 calories of broccoli or 100 calories of beef is treated very differently in the body than 100 calories of chips or cookies, or you pick the processed food. But basically, eating less, that's going to eventually start to lower your resting metabolic rate. And we now learn this from various studies out there. So if you require, let's say, 1,800 calories or 2,000 calories to maintain your weight, and you say, wait, I'm going to just eat 1,000 calories a day, I'm going to eat about half of what I need, your body, you might lose a few pounds immediately, but your body will catch up to you, and it will shut down other processes, and you will find that your body will start to go into the survival mode of sorts, and you're going to burn fewer calories at rest. And if your body has to take some of your muscle to do that, then it will, because muscle is metabolically very expensive. So your body will start shutting that down. And then you're going to say, well, I'm just going to exercise more and burn more calories. Exercise, yeah, you burn calories in it, but that isn't going to make a meaningful impact on your resting metabolic rate, which is why I sort of touched upon it earlier. The more muscle that we can build and add to our body, we'll burn more calories just at rest, and it'll raise your resting metabolic rate, which is probably about 65 or 70% of all the calories we burn, in a day comes from just sitting there doing nothing is on your body. But if you have a lot of muscle, you burn more calories. So I think that adage of doctors used to say, just, well, eat less and move more, or you're eating too much. And then they would just leave the patient with that. And the patient's like, well, what do I do? Do I just literally eat nothing? And you can do that. You could do really low caloric restriction, but over time it catches up with you. And I think fasting is different. I think there's value to fasting versus just eating really low calories. Like if you eat 500 calories a day for the whole week, that isn't going to serve you. But if you eat normal calories, then you fast for 24 hours, that's different. That gives your body a reset. That gives your body a chance to cleanse itself. But yeah, that advice, and you think about the advice in the 80s and 90s was like, just do more cardio, burn more calories, eat salads. Well, look at us. The country's gotten bigger. The country's gotten, so we know that doesn't work. I guess we should probably focus more on quality of our calories and start looking at the source of it. Is it from a whole food? Is it minimally processed? Is it ultra processed? The ultra processed food is just, um, more or less poison to us metabolically. It's going to cause us to eat more empty calories without no fiber, no protein means you're not full. And that's what they want you. Like these companies, Nabisco, these companies that make chips and crackers, they want you to eat a whole bag of chips and still feel hungry because there's nothing in it to make you full, right? So, which is interesting, and I'm sure you're aware how the new nutrition guidelines came out in America, and now we're emphasizing more whole foods and less ultra processed foods for I think the first time in, I don't know, forever, right? Don't have 6 to 11 servings of grains a day. Have more fruits, vegetables, meat, dairy, eggs, and less grain. Whole grains are still good, but not the amount that they were recommending before. So yeah, back to the, eat less, move more. It's like move more. Well, do more weight training, and not eat less of ultra processed foods, but eat more of whole foods.
Wow, that's excellent in terms of what you shared around. I think the way you shared it is really helpful for listeners, because you gave them the understanding as to what it's doing to their physiology, and it's sort of like it's counter what they're chasing, and so and then you looked at it from another perspective and how they could actually ultimately achieve their goal if it's weight loss. So really appreciate that response. It was really helpful. So the other one was, again, I think this is your mantra or your mission, is to reframe aging and focus more on optimizing to thrive. So I really love you to share, I guess, like you did before, what that is.
Yeah, I think there's two types of aging, right? There's our chronological aging, which is our age on the calendar. Then there's biological aging. And there's different tests now. You can get these commercial tests. They try to tell you, like, what's the speed at which you're aging? And all of our organs age at different paces. Let's say our brain, our heart, our liver. But again, we have so much control over this with the foods that we choose to eat, with the movement that we choose to do or not do, with the amount of high quality sleep we get. And I think, and this as I, like, you could be 55 years old and be really healthy, fit 55, or you could be a really old looking, old feeling, old acting, let's say 55. So I think reframing age is like, what are the age of your cells? And how can we make our cells, which make up our tissues, which make up our organs, how can we make those cells younger? And we can do that by getting that natural light in the morning, feeding our bodies, the high quality food, getting, filtered water and breathing clean air. And I didn't mention this before, but grounding in the earth, bare feet in the ground, there's lots of electromagnetic benefit to that. But, back to the question about reframing aging, I think you're never too late to start. Like in my case, I was 49 or 50 before I really started to pay attention to my diet and to really start doing structured exercise and resistance training. And it really made a big impact on me by my blood work, by the way I feel, by my repeat. I had a Clearly scan, which is a CT angiogram, and by getting DEXA scans, which DEXA scans look at your body composition. It's like an X-ray. So I think um, that's one other thing I didn't mention earlier is the importance of tracking things. I think I would say that to the listener, whether you're tracking steps, whether you're tracking, a lot of people track their weight, but tracking like how much protein am I eating each day? Or, you know, if what is my blood glucose? What is my hemoglobin A1C? What is my LDL? Am I looking at these things once a year? Am I looking at them more frequently? But if you start tracking things and you look at them, you're more likely to improve them, more likely to, you know, fix something that's abnormal. And that's something I would probably emphasize to most, like, my patients, or maybe your listeners or audiences. Track something. It's a new year. Think of, like, if it's not just your weight, steps, protein, and don't obsess over calories. I would think about, if you're starting a weightlifting program, write down how much are you progressing each week. Be mindful of that. And if you're more intentional, you'll see changes in 3 months or 6 months, but try to track something. And I say steps because that's kind of easy one. A lot of people have that capacity on their phone or wearables and everything, or track your sleep. Like I use an Oura ring. You don't have to be obsessed over these things, but I think if you start tracking something, you'll be moving in the right direction. And hopefully, like, you can slow down your pace of aging. Like, we don't have to be, you know, 80 years old and headed to a nursing home. And I think with regard to aging in America, most people are relatively, let's say, healthy, maybe till their early 60s, even though they might have some chronic disease and on medication. And then from early 60s to their death at, let's say, late 70s, those last 15 years of life are low quality. So they may have had you know, very low quality. So that's their lifespan. They live to be 78, but their health span, which is how good their life is, was maybe only up to 60. So you can have a great long health span of living a good high quality life, hopefully till you're 80 or 90 and then have a quick, hopefully sudden drop off and die within 6 months, let's say when you're 95. But it's never too late to make these changes, whether you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s. And a lot of them don't involve medication, it's lifestyle.
You touched on a very topical point, and that was around protein. Obviously, you mentioned protein a lot and the importance of getting your protein right and potentially using that as a indicative marker. Am I getting enough daily protein? The question I know the listener's probably thinking is there's a lot of debate out there as to how much protein, and there's different camps thinking less is better, more is in, and there's other camps thinking more and more and more. So I'm really keen to get your take on the protein side of things.
Yeah, I think even outside of what the recommendations just changed, in the United States, it was 0.8 grams per kilogram. Now it's up to 1.2 to 1.6. You could almost say it almost doubled. And I think depending if your listeners are, in America or outside, if they're metric or not, I think close to that 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight is a good goal to shoot for. Because if you miss it and if you're close to it, you're still getting there. I think the old RDA was so low, it was just how much protein I need to survive, to just to make it. But I think you, me, and your listeners, they want to do more than that. You want to really thrive. So I would say, about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. If you're really working at, especially if you're doing resistance training, I think it becomes even more important. And I think it becomes more important as we get older. Maybe that's after the age of 60, having this period they call anabolic resistance, where we don't respond as well hormonally into the protein. You might even need more protein as we get older. But yeah, I would land around 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. And I say that because if someone is very, very overweight, like they weigh 300 pounds, I wouldn't expect them to eat 300 grams of protein a day. But if you're 300 and your goal weight is 190, then you adjust accordingly. But I think that's a relatively safe. Some people say it's just less than 1 gram, 0.8, but I think for practical advice, I'd say, hey, if you weigh 150 pounds, try to eat about 150 grams of protein a day. If you weigh 150 and you want to lose weight, maybe you'll aim for 130 or a lower number.
Okay. Yeah. No, I appreciate your response there in terms of sharing what the guidelines are and then articulating what's going to be helpful around, I guess, whether you're later on in life, and certainly the requirements for protein increase, or and there's so many variables in terms of exercise and how much resistance training you're doing and things like that. Really, you want to add anything to that?
Oh, no, I was just agreeing.
Yeah. So I'm really intrigued now as to this journey that you started. You sort of never too late. It's that 49 sort of moment where you're woken up with some blood results. You've obviously implemented a lot of good things that help generate your your pyramid, which then is the foundation, I think, for your digital program to help coach people through these lifestyle and nutritional changes to help them optimize their well-being. Where is your cardiac markers today? Like, have you seen a nice shift? Just wondering what's.
I have it. I get my blood checked every quarter, so every 3 months. There's a company, it's called Life Force. I don't know if you heard of it. It's a group. It's a Tony Robbins and a bunch of longevity physicians have this as a company. It's a service that they do this. And then I do a telehealth visit with one of their physicians to go over the blood work. And, I have gotten it down a lot with lifestyle. And I am now at the point where I'm like, should I be adding in a statin to get the cholesterol super low? And that's a conversation probably for a different day. It's like, how low should it be? If you have the presence of disease, which I do have on the calcium scan, versus someone who has no disease and just wants to, primary prevention. But a lot of those markers have come down, and my body composition has changed a lot, which I track via DEXA scans. But with regard to the heart, yeah, I had a scan repeated 2 years ago. I'll probably do it again in the next year or two. That's something I'm doing just because I had a high calcium score, and then I need to really track that. And what I learned is a lot of heart disease comes more from inflammation, which not necessarily from cholesterol. It's from inflammation in the body, which comes from diet, which insulin resistance. These are things that are driving a lot of the disease that we see now in America or in the world, like chronic diseases. So I think by eating more whole foods and a sort of a more of an anti-inflammatory diet, that's going to help keep someone's, or like my, heart numbers in a better place. But like I mentioned before, like you have to track these things. Like I went 15 plus years without even looking at my blood work because I was like young and I was a resident, I was on call, and they say doctors are the worst patients, but I would encourage your audience to like make an appointment with your doctor if you haven't seen it in a while. It's a new year, reach out. And if you're not getting the right answers from your doctor, sometimes you have to find like maybe a functional medicine doctor or integrative medicine doctor or a naturopathic doctor who's going to maybe give you a slightly different advice, or a lifestyle medicine doctor than your traditional doctor. Like I'm a traditional Western trained doctor, and a lot of times we treat symptoms. We don't really treat the root cause of disease. And there are other doctors that can maybe help you on a deeper level if you need it.
Fantastic. And just on that note, obviously the listeners realize it's New Year, and they've probably got goals, and they're probably thinking, oh, what Dr. Bill Bruno shared today has been very insightful, and they want to know more. They want to know more about this pyramid. They are probably looking for some support. So how can the listeners, viewers best connect with you?
Yeah, my website is williambrunomd.com, which is my plastic surgery website. And on there, I have a tab just for wellness. So it's a drop down tab. And I actually have 2 free eBooks, your audience might want. One is it's a short one. It's 14 pages on just my 10 tips for like longevity, like bullet points. Then I have another ebook on how to improve your body composition, like losing fat, gaining muscle. And my digital course is there and a virtual coaching program. And I'm pretty active on Instagram at the same handle, which is William Bruno MD. But yeah, it's a new year. I would encourage everyone to take action, even if that means, going to bed earlier, or getting that sunlight in the morning, or tracking their protein, or getting an Oura ring for their sleep. I mean, doing something, because a lot of times you listen to podcasts and you're like, wow, that was interesting, but they never do anything. And that's what I would probably leave the audience with, like, take action. It's a new year, and just try to follow through.
Fantastic advice. I really appreciate you coming on, Dr. Bill Bruno, sharing all your insights, your wisdom, which has been very insightful. So just really appreciate your time, and really enhancing and enlightening the well-being of the Health Up listeners.
Thank you so much for your time, Anthony. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And to the listeners, if you found value in today's episode, and please share it with others that could also gain values, please share it far and wide. And yeah, the whole mission of this podcast is to enhance and enlighten the well-being of others. And Dr. Bruno has shared such great insights around how you can do that. So please share it, and please continue to health up.